Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. Today, let's look at a sort of a rolling subject. I call it that because even as of yesterday, anybody that has seen journalists hangout would have seen that our Babajide Kolade Otitoju also looked at this subject. And we're talking about insecurity in the Northeast. I was even joking with our guest this morning that depending on how you look at it, is it security in the Northeast? I beg your pardon. Is it security in the Northeast, a focus on security in the Northeast, or a focus on insecurity in the Northeast? I was joking with him that it doesn't matter which way you take it, the subject matter is going to be pretty much the same. I'm talking here about Dr. John Ngamsa. Dr. John Ngamsa is the special advisor to the Adamawa State Governor on communications and strategy. Good morning to you, sir, and thank you for making yourself available this morning.
Good morning. Nice meeting you for the first time.
Indeed. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you. Right.
Now, security in the Northeast has been a long, if it's a conversation, it's been a long drawn conversation. We've been at it for years now. When you look at the Northeast, the fact that borders in Nigeria generally are porous, but up there in the Northeast especially, the neighboring countries, they also harbor their own dangers. We're hearing that even within Nigeria, you chase bandits and all these criminals. You chase them from one area, Kaduna, for example, they move to another state. You chase them from Borno, they move in. So all of these things are long-standing problems. Now, what I would like to do is maybe start, because you are an expert, you are up there. Yours will be more of a first-hand account. How would you evaluate the state of, let me put it, security? How would you evaluate the state of security in the Northeast? Now, I'll ask this question this way, against the backdrop of reports that the bandits and all these kind of people seem to be able to run rings around that which we call our security apparatus.
Yes, I think I understood exactly the context from where you're coming from. If I get you right, we're trying to get a bridge difference between insecurity and security itself. But when you look at security, let's apply it more to what obtains when it affects the administration of security itself,
yes,
nationally.
Yes.
And insecurity, perhaps, to how people become victims and the kind of things that obtain in the process of their own existence, like the threats they pass through. Now, from the background, you accept with me that the Northeast Zone is one of the largest geographical space that Nigeria has, not fully developed, with gross difficulties in terms of terrain and trying to put operational issues right. The road networking, not good enough at least to meet up our demands in terms of the fact that the place is forested and the terrain is difficult. Added to the fact that we have the longest straight border, particularly in Adamawa State, of about 900 kilometers with the Cameroon Republic, and some tracts that are not defined on maps, for these kind of hopeless characters, and endless characters, to go about hiding themselves and doing exactly what they want. That in itself have brought about, let me say, about three major categories of difficulties in terms of things that have brought insecurity in our Northeast. One, the Boko Haram. The second one is the farmer herder. And if you look at them, all of them need some kind of hiding. They need some kind of haven. And then the third one is perhaps the urban terrorism and the instigation of the fallout of exactly what we have. When people suffer as IDPs and they have to move to cities, the migration itself brings constraints to our own cities and state capitals. And that have created, one way or the other, what we understand as, the definition that brought three major states together to be called the Bay States. That's Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe, where we've had the intensity of the difficulties. But more to it, it is all about the Boko Haram. It's all about what they're doing. It's more about the split and the fact that they're having field day, just like you've mentioned. It's more about what they're doing, perhaps above, what the security services can do. Now, we know that all this while we've had difficulties really trying to do that, but from the national perspective, one will have to do a lot to commend the efforts of the state governors wherever they are in the Northeast zone, particularly those of them that exist within the confines of the Bay States. That's Borno, Adamawa, and Taraba. But of all of them, at least let me try to let you know that Adamawa State appears to be at the heart of it. Because if something happens in Yobe and they run into Borno, they can have a stretched limit of Sambisa forest that comes into Adamawa State through either Hong local government or Gombe local government that you can see has been on the front reportage recently, at least giving us some continuous activities of Boko Haram. And like you rightly said, our tracks and roads are not well monitored. They're so large, and except something is done in the interim to bring about this particular thing, it is more difficult for a state like Adamawa State, for instance. But it is taking the good ingenuity of the man on the ground, whether you like it or not. You cannot talk about stabilizing Northeast Zone, particularly in terms of security, without mentioning Umar Ahmad Fintri of Adamawa State, the governor, who has taken good measures, at least to tackle two of the most notorious issues of insecurity, in our own state, and Northeast Zone particularly. At least in the past 1 year, he's been able to hold the governors of Northeast Zone on strictly this security issue with a blueprint that some of us were part of, that he encouraged to develop along the line. And that has helped in giving dimension, to even monitor and to put in check issues of being farmer harder crisis that have been notorious in the southern part of Adamawa, closing up with Taraba State, where a lot of people have been killed. So in that particular consideration, I say that the state where I belong, where I also serve as on advisory level to the governor on strategy, he's been able, to look at issues perhaps a little deeper than we're perceiving them from the national. He has domesticated at least his policies to ensure that he puts across, mechanisms and structures, that will help him do a lot in terms of early warning, and early responses. He has done extra on that note, and I believe that the last reflection that even directors of state security services had in Adamawa State, he gave them a blueprint, and the outcome of it, which one will not disclose, would have been the appreciation of those security administrators to the fact that he was a master of his game and he is ready to do more. And he has a very tentative blueprint, yes, that he has put in place at least to checkmate and to arrange and to take care of three of the most notorious hydra-rated kind of security insecurities. Now, if I may just borrow your term and just play over, like the issues of the urban crimes, for instance, committed by young people. In our own state, they've grown to call themselves Sheila. They have, an anticipated collaboration with some bandits, that come around and then do a few things in the rural areas and that. But that has been worked out and stopped. It's a very good blueprint.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
That's good to know, because actually I was going to ask if what you're speaking about refers to the northern governors pledging to cooperate with the cooperate with the federal government to really come to focus on this problem. Because that as far back this is as far back as last year. As far back as last year, as Governor Yahaya was actually saying that, look, we were going to get together once and for all, because people, maybe they are not professional in terms of security matters and so might not understand all the intricacies. But there seems to be a notion that, look, if we don't come as a country to say enough, thus far and no further, because as you were alluding to, these bandits, they actually have camps that are known. And so that would prompt some maybe commentators or Nigerians or observers to say that, but if we know where they are, they'll say, perhaps proudly, we're not a banana republic. Why don't we go and take them out? Now, I said people might not be professional security people, so they might not understand the intricacies. But what indeed are the intricacies where we know bandits' camps, we know who they are, and yet there seems to be a softly approach?
My brother, it is to underrate, the peasant or the native by trying to look down on what his intelligence is like. But I assure you, just like you rightly pointed, that whether we like it or not, the natives, those in the rural areas, have better information about some of these things that bandits, terrorists, Boko Haram, herdsmen, and whatnot do. You'll be shocked to notice that from personal experience, even when we had farmer harder crisis in Adamawa State, before the raid, 2 days, somebody flew a drone and had pictures and even videos of them preparing and wagging weapons at least to do that. It is not commonplace, to even see people like Turji wherever they are and other high-class Boko Haram, test ordinances and guns and ammunitions, with impunity. But what I'm simply trying to strike here is the fact that despite the fact that it's a rural affair, we have to take them considerably serious. I think I'll be dragged into looking at my governor's model, which is serving as a headlight at least to get people through. I know at the crux of when he was having gross difficulties with both Boko Haram in the north, farmer herders in the south, and Sheila boys in the middle, he had to take an initiative to bring together non-governmental organizations and set up good committees that work out issues that will help him to draw rural intelligence good enough for him to have the kind of information that is required for administration. You'll find him. Personally, he doesn't respond to my notes just casually, but the moment you mention anything to do about threat on his own people, you'll be shocked that he picks it. And I'm made to understand that he has, on a very good note, an analytical tool that affords him the opportunity to get both rural intelligence, from the build-up that he has done on personal effort and at governmental level, at least to set up a very good early warning, early response scheme. That has helped him a lot. And I'll tell you that we don't just stay here as civilians or as politicians and be looked down upon by security services that we've given time to train. They are so small, they are limited, their gadgets are not good enough at least to meet up that which is right. But given the terrain and the contextual application and what it does for a governor sitting on and being alert, they can have a lot of information good enough to even give the security forces what to do. And that lineup, I told you that I will be using the larger part of what my governor has done in the past 5 years and 1 year, reviewing and ensuring that he does something that is right enough for us to do. So it is not just for us to accept the fact that civilians have no knowledge and that the rural areas are helpless. It is just for us to encourage the agencies concerned and the government at the national level to put up what is required of them to be in tune with rural intelligence good enough for them to mitigate and stop some of these terrible things that are happening to us.
Indeed. And quite frankly, one would be excited to hear, for example, what your governor has been doing about it, because it's almost as if, the way it is made to sound, it's almost as if governments are helpless, which might not necessarily be the case. So one would like to hear some of those things, because people will, you hear the commentary quite often that what is lacking is governance. If there were sufficient governance, then the matter wouldn't be as bad as that. You chuckle, so I know that there's more to that kind of a notion than meets the eye.
Yes. There are times we feel this way about ungoverned spaces. But what you are given us as a responsibility to administrate or to overload, to look over a state, requires that you sit down on your nerves. Now, I'm not talking about my governor. I'm making reference to him above others. But I'm looking at the situation where I've seen him in the past 4 years, even before I joined him in his political party, where he has succeeded in baptizing me, to have been the kind of person that listens to people of all sorts, and he has never taken time to politicize security issues.
Okay.
On a much more serious note, whoever is given responsibility as a governor, they're all my bosses, the 6 of them in the Northeast Zone, would have been in position to learn what to do truly, to work towards trying to get it right with people and get the experts that will advise you, and then you take the advice more seriously. What my governor did in the first place to handle the farmer herder crisis, we have the largest population of cattle. We have the best land, at least for grazing. And so you anticipate that due to that, we're going to be having more crises. Looking at that, he formed up a peace committee, which he brought people from the extreme divide of the farmers and the herders, and he set them in 21 days to give him solutions. That document is still there in form of a report that even international organizations have used. I know more than 15 of them that have contacted me and have patronized that document that has given them a very good guide. So that gives you the kind of insight into what a leader or a governor can do, which is on people, and how he can bring in all creative initiatives and try to set things right. Besides making it just a committee, he turned it into a standing committee, and presently he is working on a very good note to set up what is called a peace committee, a peace agency that is going to take note of some of these fundamental things that he has realized along the line. Now, why I'm insisting on this is to tell you that if one is a little more strategic, you will move away from the idea of gimmicks that keep telling that people out there are not having resources and that is why they join criminality. But we know that open crimes of high dimension occur even in the city of Abuja, where just very close to the seat of power. Convoys of even ministers and governors have been attacked and whatnot. That's not just the issue. But facing the reality of what matters is what should be. There are countries that are poorer than Nigeria, particularly Cameroon, in our neighboring area there. They don't have all the resources you talk about. But there is a mainstreaming thing they do, at least, to bring their own people together and give them forecast in such a way that they can be law-abiding citizens and be contented with what is offered until development comes to meet them. That I can tell you that my governor is busy opening out rural roads and taking electricity to places we never expect, and thereby making it extremely difficult for some people to sit in the corner and begin to instigate people to get into certain things that are not. Well, I cannot advise governors because they're excellencies. I can only on a lighter note say that they're also open and they need people to come with strategic initiatives that actually matter. It's not a question of, yes, I've won election, or he has won election, let's leave him alone to do it alone. That's not the issue. So it's a question of bringing both the opposition and people that matter to table and asking them to help you solve these problems. That in itself, I believe, is goodwill political action, taking cue from what our president is doing presently as the president of Nigeria, Ahmed Tinubu, bringing all sorts of people, all people that initially attacked him. You will call them to table and say, friend, please tell me what you want me to do.
Okay.
And I believe that's the way to go. Instead of just leaving it in the hands of people and allowing them to just suffer. Governance is about all of us. So whether you are defeated in elections or whatnot, you have to learn to bring to the table something for us to have security so that you too tomorrow can be the person that will take over.
A sort of a participative kind of governance strategy.
Yes.
Whereas we know what we think we should be doing,
Yes,
but we still would like to hear from the people. Now, in this connection, I want to connect that to something that you said at the very, very beginning about intelligence and all of that. And also bearing in mind that it's been going on for so long now, there are those who think that, quite frankly, people are making money out of this. It is not in certain interests for all of this to go away and for peace to reign. There are those we know. It usually happens wherever you have crises that have been going on for quite a while. I wanted to bring in the traditional rulers here. Surely they are a very valuable source of intelligence, because there's very little that goes on. They have their own special kind of networks that might not be governmental. What is the extent, in your opinion, that the rulers, the traditional rulers, are also participating in this whole security drive?
You know, you've touched on an aspect that actually appeals to my sense of commitment and seriousness. I believe in the existence of traditional rulers as mainstream owners of the people's difficulties, you know, and whatever that exists wherever they are. Now, they've done their best. Every traditional ruler anywhere from north to south have been fantastic, and you have to give them kudos. Sometimes I wonder why they are bullied, you know, to be blamed for certain things that occur in their own environment without them participating. But let me tell you, they are people that have had good intelligence, good information, and I've worked closely with quite a number of them, particularly in the southern part of Adamawa State. The 5 of them are first-class rulers, and one of them, the Hamabata particularly, is the vice chairman of the Northern Rulers Association, you know, where I happen to be part of his own recordsmen. The same thing with Hamabachama, the same thing with Gangwari, the same thing with Amnashalan, the same thing with Kwandinungra. All of them have been up and doing at very intense moments, generating good information and doing that which is right. In fact, on good notice, one of them even wrote a book before he became a traditional ruler on precautionary measures to be taken, you know, on security, particularly rural security. And that is the paramount ruler of the Bachama Kingdom, Ismail Amabachama, Dan Ismail. He wrote a fantastic book which I believe I've used on some fora and I've made reference to. And that book is well recorded on the fact that traditional rulers have a lot, at least, to do, and they're doing and will continue to do. Perhaps what we need to look into is how to give them the actual support and to make their own networks sophisticated enough, at least, to give the required intelligence services what they need, other than just coming up to bully them, you know, when aftermath of occurrences have occurred or some kind of things like that. And at the end of the day, you know, you blame them for what they're doing right. I know they don't sleep because anything that happens in the rural area, if a farmer killed, an animal killed, a herder killed, or something like that, they have good information, which at least they are generating. Now, let me just leave Northeast Zone and come back to my state more precisely to tell you what my governor did and what he's doing presently. He has a regular meeting of security with them, just like he has with the regular security services, and he's building structures and networks good enough based on the information and speciality given, at least from the specialized organizations. I know the governor has worked with very good NGOs like Search for Common Ground, you know, the Mercy Corps, you know, and the Northeast Creative, you know, sponsored by the United States of America, you know, on some of these issues, and they've massively gone in and have trained people on very credible things, utilizing the space that traditional rulers have given them to do. And I can assure you that there is no zone, there is no traditional district that you go to without meeting 5 or 6 of such people that traditional rulers are utilizing more effectively. And given them that particular aspect, I tell you that if all of them are inspired, just like the governor of Adamawa State is doing, definitely you are going to get it right because they've built up, you know, a particular network that gives the government early warning, early response, at least mechanisms good enough for the governor to sit up and to do that which is right. And they've put in their own very best, and they'll continue to do that to my own understanding. And they will be fantastic once they're given at least what is expected of them. Okay. So it's now the question of not just leaving them to handle issues just from the old or, you know, kind of traditional aspect. Let them now move to something much more modern. Give them communication gadgets, equip them, you know, allow them to have electronic interaction, build up the system. Really, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, you know, of what my governor is trying to do. But I assure you, in a while, you know, even the testing and the pilot of what he's doing is effectively giving him good and ample information, enough at least, because he's utilizing the space, you know, and the courtesy, you know, of the traditional rulers to make a lot of headway. You know, we've had a lot of paramount rulers, you know, particularly the Lamido of Adamawa, you know, who has been at the heart of issues too. He's not been sleeping over that issue. And the emir of Mubi, you know, at a point, Mubi was the capital of Boko Haram at a point. And you can imagine that the emir survived that particular, whatever it is, and one of the first persons to even come back and recover his land. So without these traditional rulers, particularly in our own space, they're not likely to get it right. So we get it right because our traditional rulers are good, and we know that by the time you give them the effectiveness of sincerely what is required, they will be in a better position to take you from difficulties, you know, to solutions.
Okay, excellent. That's very gratifying to hear and quite encouraging. Maybe just your view, your perspective on two things. One, the camps that are known. They are not secret camps that are not known. What we will do with that. I appreciate when you say that, well, it's not all strategies that you're at liberty to talk about on air. And then the forests, which, you know, they actually take refuge in. Those surely are two key aspects that have to be addressed.
Yes, sir. You know, I understand that when we talk about haven, we talk about restricted places, we talk about difficult terrains and places to go to, appear to be where these people live and mobilize, and then do exactly what they like doing, you know, at least to satisfy the devil. But like I always tell you, between the governors of Adamawa and Taraba, there's a high-class collaboration that I also, as a matter of strategy, may not like to tell you exactly what it is, despite the fact that I've played with you. Now, I'm even here in Jalingo presently on one of such meetings to insist on raising the consciousness of natives and people around to be forthright and patriotic in giving credible information and intelligence in respect to such. Now, in Adamawa State, for instance, my governor have decided to pass a policy which looks like agricultural, you know, talking about felling of trees and ensuring that virtually every there is a forest reserve, there must be somebody responsible for it. And that's part of the check. And whatever it is that is going to help in making, you know, some of our bushes to be calmed, to be controlled, and to be in perspective good enough at least for action to be taken. So I know that the federal government has a robust plan, you know, to bring about the mounting of forest guards and equipping, you know, of either the Civil Defense Corps and the police and other joint forces and vigilantes at least to take charge of that. But before that happens, you know, you have to look at what comes, you know, in between the line and what obtains in your own environment good enough for you to solve the problem. Yes, information comes on time, but I also would like to blame us, you know, we the journalists, in as much as we do our best, but there's something we don't do. What we don't do out of our narratives is that we don't follow up stories and ensure that information about a particular bandit camp is taken to its logical conclusion and something is done about it. And I believe that that is where our gatekeeping experience and our own action of trying to set agenda should come in. So we have to change our narratives from the media. I challenge you and I challenge myself that what we do in most cases is just to engage the public, you know, with outcomes of what happened. 15 people killed by bandits, you know, motorcycles of this band, you know, vehicles of so persons snatched, houses so banned. But what do we do before we pass this information? Okay. Definitely, a journalist is a frontliner in determining what obtains so that he can set his own flow of information good enough to provide intelligence, you know, in the right way for us to move ahead. Thank you.
I take your point. Let me bring on Festus, who is watching in Ikorodu. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir, Uncle Yori.
Thank you for calling in.
Nice work. Yes, sir. Uncle Yori, what I want to say is that you know, after God is government. I'm saying that after God is government, I'm saying that government is not taking the right action to deal with all these criminals.
How do you mean?
So by the time government, every day we keep on hearing killings, and government out there are seeing them. He gives me some heart attacks sometimes when I hear all these claims up and down. It's not good. Let the government take the right action. Deal with them. They are not bigger than the government. That's my own contribution, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for calling in, Festus. Well, Dr. Ngamsa, you see, this is the challenge. Somebody is saying there that we hear about you people will get together and you'll be telling us, Turenchi, about the situation of security. But after God, it is government. So why has government allowed this conversation to continue? Why has government not been able to take this problem out once and for all? You know what? You heard him. Before you launch into your response, I think I'm going to have to take a break. Let me take a break so that you won't be interrupted. We'll be right back. Please stay with us. Okay, welcome back. We're focusing on Northeast security, and our guest is Dr. John Ngamsa. He is the special advisor to the governor of Adamawa on communications and strategy. Now, just before we went on break, Festus had called in and said that he's just about fed up with these continuing conversations on security and why is government enabling the continuation of such conversations. Okay, just please hold that, because when we were away, Comrade Ayo in Oshogbo also called in. So let me join Comrade Ayo's presentation with that of Festus. Good morning to you, Comrade Ayo in Oshogbo.
Good morning.
Please go ahead now.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Good morning, sir. Go ahead, please.
Uncle Yori, what I want to say.
Now, where are we getting that rattling sound from? Are you on a vehicle, on an Okada, in a vehicle? There was some distraction. Comrade Ayo, are you still there? I think we've lost Comrade Ayo. Okay. The quality of the call was such that even though we were hearing him in the background, there seemed to be some sort of wind noise. At least that's what it sounded like. Okay, in the meantime, let's go on to deal with Festus, who called in just before we went on break and saying that as far as he's concerned, the might of government, he can't understand why all these non-state actors are being as recalcitrant as they seem to be.
You know, I like Festus's theology that says government
After
is
God.
second to God. Yes, but let me correct him to say that government is in God's order. And except we're getting it wrong, even the Bible, what I hold most serious, talks about the fact that you have to pray for those in authority because it is the will of God. And I believe in the Quran too. You cannot disregard, the constituted authority of governance and government anywhere in the whole world from what God intends to do. So government is the representative of God on earth, at least to do that which is right. And when you do that which is right, right things will follow your nation. And we are not doing what is right, and so right things are not coming our own way. And that is why we have a lot of difficulties. But we are human. And God will be able at least to justify all of us, because there is no way man can be God himself. Now, back to the reality of the issues, that sometimes we overburden the government with general expectations that they cannot handle. There is no person who has taken off to be a governor or to even hold a political office that does not know exactly the import of what he has done. Yes, a number could go irresponsible, a number could do that which is wrong, but not at the level where you are called a governor. I see governors as people that actually sell their sleep, at least to suffer and be bullied by people from outside with general expectations that are not supposed to be. There are times I've looked at my governor, if I see his face, I just walk away, because I know the kind of burden he's carrying. And all I try to do, and all citizens should do, is to learn to come to some of these people with solutions rather than criticism that will not help. Criticism, yes, as long as there's a suggestion to put things right, that makes it good. But what I'm simply trying to say is over expectations cannot give us whatever. Whatever it is you sit down to think and conceive that is right to be done, look for appropriate channel of trying to put it threat for people to do that which is right. Like I told you, Nigeria is passing through very serious and untold hardship that only God and those that you've elected know exactly what it is. And you cannot say they are doing bad. Now just imagine the successes recorded by governments across the states. Just look at what they've been able to do and imagine what our security services have done. And sometimes you look at them, they are our brothers, they are our sons, they are our daughters. Somebody will pick an aircraft and it will crash. Somebody will be shot. Somebody's neck will be cut. Some people will be dismembered. And you see those things and yet still believe that government is not doing anything. Well, I'm fine. I'm not saying it because I'm trying to be a hyper supportive of government or because I'm part of government or some kind of things like that. But I've done what I'm talking about, even earlier than being engaged in government. We've done things and I've gone out, like I told you now, that as an individual, I traveled to Jalingo purposely to meet concerned people that will address some of these issues that are affecting our cross-border difficulties, in respect to farmer harder issues. And there are non-governmental organizations that have participated, in profiling a lot of non-kinetic dimensions and putting it. These people are outside the government, but they also bring their sense of responsibility into the government because they give exactly what is required of them. So what I'm simply trying to say that security, as popularly said, is everybody's business. My former governor, Boni Haruna, will say that security is like an enterprise where everybody will have to participate.
Indeed.
And if you don't put in your best, you're not going to get a dividend out of it.
Indeed.
So what I'm thinking is, let's do what we can as citizens. There are quite a number of people on retirement, retired generals, retired IGPs, CPs of police. How do we utilize these people?
All right,
You've given somebody
one second
for 35 years, and he goes out without you utilizing them. So that's just what I'm trying to, be excited about to say that it's our all wholesome responsibility as people.
Security,
government is
security is everybody's business. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. George. Thank you for holding on. Go ahead now, please.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Good morning.
Uncle Yori, what the Adamawa state government is doing in terms of consolidation of security arrangements is commendable. But generally speaking, the Northeast was where the major insecurity began. The government did well there by tackling the Boko Haram saga. But one notices that Boko Haram saga spiraled to other parts of the country. The efforts that the government made in the Northeast to tackle Boko Haram did not continue in the other parts of the country. I do not see the difference between bandits and Boko Haram. It was when the government was putting pressure on them in the Northeast that they spiraled to other parts of the country in the guise of bandits. That's the way it is. If the government, like somebody who is saying that the government is not doing enough, he's right. If the government wants to actually tackle this insecurity, I'm not a retired soldier, but I know they can round these boys up in a concerted effort, round them up and approach them from different corners. We have the equipment, we have the men, but why it is not being done is what many people are wondering.
Okay.
We have what it takes to tackle them, but why the delay? You know the camps, you know where they are. And some state governors go to meet them and negotiate with them. We see some giving their leaders, the bandit leaders, traditional titles. Is that not defeatism? I'm sorry to say, but that's the way I see it.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Mr. George, for calling in. Okay, coming over to John, Dr. John Ngamsa. That's a difficult area. Perhaps we don't understand it. Taking one point that caller mentioned, that some governors know these people personally, actually interact with them, perhaps from the point of view of we're going to leave no stone unturned. But then the overriding point that George made was that whereas he's commending what Adamawa State has been able to do, he's a bit concerned about maybe not when these people are flushed out of the Adamawa axis, for instance, the fight isn't continued with the same vigor wherever they might, spill into from there. Your thoughts?
You see, I appreciate every Nigerian's anger. Personally, I felt so severally until you come close and you get to know exactly what's there. A popular philosopher will say that, when you get there, sometimes you notice that there is no there there. There's a point you reach as a parent, for instance, when you have money in your pocket and it is exhausted, and your son comes to tell you that I need this, I need that, the kind of politics we play. So this is essentially what you see also playing with some of these state governors, where, as a matter of fact, the larger part of the resources that are supposed to be deployed for security is not in their own hands. You can even see that out of the little some of them have, they still support even the federal networks, at least to make sure that they exist, to bring at least some kind of measure that will get people some measure of safety. It is true, like I said from the beginning, that governors are human beings like you. They're faced with the kind of challenges quite a number of us don't even see. They are given the kind of information that sometimes if they get scared and they run away, will be in pandemonium and trouble. I assure you, I don't envy any governor, I don't envy even the president of Nigeria, knowing that once they come out to say, oh, this is how bad this thing is as a matter of fact, and they're going to quit, that something will happen and this nation will crash. So essentially what I'm trying to say is, yes, we appreciate as much as they do. Yes, we'll frown at those people that are failing to do that which is right, but we also stand by those people that pick up issues and mount them proactively. I was just listening to the governor of Taraba, a moment ago, a commissioner was talking about his state of preparedness, to secure a particular fishing festival at Ibi. Now, that kind of pragmatic and proactive approach towards setting what is sincerely required matters a lot. So what I'm simply trying to say is I want us to understand that we have to hold a carrot, and something else, to scare, and to control some of these characters. I'm not saying you go out, you negotiate with them, but I'm saying that there are some of these things that are more intricate than the eye can see. And even in the military, they know the essence of both kinetic and non-kinetic means of trying to get things done. And I assure you that underground, quite a number of them have displayed and have done greater things that we've not seen yet.
Okay.
Only isolated cases, like I said, is the way we portray the narrative sometimes, that overblow the proportions and make it look as if the governments are not doing anything. But I assure you that, like I said, just watch it and see. If I'm going to be a security prophet, at this moment, let me predict to you that in the next 6 to maybe 9 months' time, some of these things that we are seeing critically, let me tell you, have won those bandits and terrorists to find their way out, because I'm part of those people that are praying, I'm part of those people that are taking efforts, I'm part of those people that are having confidence in the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the security services on good notice that they have the ability and the credibility to do it, and they're going to do it.
Indeed.
Now, let's see from what the president of Nigeria has done in changing guards and making them to be effective and calling them timely to be giving him reports and deploying. And the center of this, I also have confidence in the Nigerian NSA, Malam Nuhu Ribadu, that you can know he's not also sleeping, he's doing his own best, left, right, and center. With the probable instinct that you know him for, he's working night and day, and virtually everybody is in it. I tell you that if we stop grumbling and putting solutions, we will have solutions instead of grumbles.
All right, then. For those who might think that the military is not doing enough, or maybe is not even doing anything, I shudder to think if indeed the military were to, as it were, sort of down tools, so that you just have an example of what it would be without our involvement here, much as we might not be appreciated by those who don't have the deep knowledge of what it takes. Mazi Okoroafo has called in from Arochukwu. Good morning to you, sir. I hope we haven't lost Mazi Okoroafo, who called in from Arochukwu. Mazi, can you hear us? I do fear that we might have lost Mazi Okoroafo. Also, okay, there was another part of that question I asked before now, which was your thoughts on, because we have a zero tolerance generally to banditry, kidnappings, and all of that kind of thing, how do you situate that next to what is now being heard that some governors are actually engaging with these people? But I hear Mazi Okoroafo is back. So let me just go to Mazi Okoroafo. Good morning, Mazi.
Good morning, Sayodi. Good morning, I guess. Sayodi, see, this issue of security network, whether northeast or northwest or south or south, any part of Nigeria, is no longer the job of everybody pointing the finger to the federal government. So, states should start with what we call forest guard. Their forest guards should be mainly inside the forest. Those forests where those criminals are staying, that is where forest guards should be. Forest guards should have nothing to do inside town or inside the community. They should be inside the forest. Then we now move to community policing. The community inside it, that's where we make use of that community, that those communities, you know, the way they have all these village squares, village town homes, all those that community. We now know that the local government police, the local government authority, they are in charge of that one. At least they take care of those ones. It will help us. Then now talk about the state police. Now, we are looking at the situation in terms of this security as something that belongs to the federal government. So, all these people that come to do all these atrocities, all of them are in the forest. Look at how porous our forest is. Look at the people cannot go and farm because the forest is porous. Nobody is there because people are afraid to go there. That is why, whether the federal government or the state government or local government, as a matter of urgency, local government and state government should embark on forest guard now or never if they want us to have excess food. And this issue of drone, how much does this say? How much is drone cost? You saw what happened in Israel. What happened? Iran said over 300 and something drones plus ballistic missiles. 300 and here we have 700 to for local government. What does it say the local government to take care of it? If Iran can send 300 and something ballistic drones to a country, within that is each drone or ballistic that takes 5 hours from Iran to Israel. 5 hours. Now in Nigeria, that means we have to buy drones. The drone we are going to buy is not of that capacity. So what does it take the local government authority or the state government? What are they saying? You say, all right,
Mazi. Mazi, I think your point is taken. But thank you very much for calling in, sir. But we've got to give John, the time. We're fast running out of time. Please go ahead, John.
Yes, I appreciate exactly what Mazi is trying to say, as a matter of fact that we are not putting our resources together to ensure that we get things work for us. One local government chairman can take care of all it takes to get aerial information daily, 24 hours about settlement in his own environment. Now, these facilities are there, they're cheap, but perhaps the connecting knowledge, I feel guilty trying to draw you back to Adamawa while we're trying to look at national issues. But because Adamawa is where my eye is and the model is set to work, I know exactly how my governor has done his best to network the local government chairman and task them with responsibility of daily reporting, to the desk of the security permanent secretary on the fact that by the end of the week, my governor can comfortably tell you that if care is not taken, this thing will happen in that local government, and then you begin to call them back and warn them. Well, these are working mechanisms. So what I'm trying to say is now that we are beginning to realize how large Nigeria is and how scanty our security deployment resources are, good enough to take charge and care of what is required. Sometimes it's not very much about the equipment. It's also sometimes ready about what you have at hand, at least to utilize more effectively to take control of your own environment and the context you are given at least to administer. The colonial masters came here, with one single frail-looking political officer, with big ears and maybe eyes hidden, putting on a cap and taking charge of huge territories and reporting daily on what obtains, and they got it right to administrate their colonial whatever it is. So I think we have to look at the disconnection between policy, and implementation in this nation, particularly where we have to learn to synergize, that instead of duplicating our own security arms, let's set them to function. Yes, we have road safety that takes care of the road. There is military traffic control, there's police traffic control. All of them are just adequately, there's the VIO. Why all this duplication? Now, why can't you restrict, something like National Civil Defense to either agro rangers something and strictly trained to maintain forests? And then you bring another, at least take charge of pipeline vandalization and whatnot, and make everybody to walk like somebody else that can be deployed somewhere. So I'm a policeman, I'm going on my beat somewhere else, I see somebody hit, it's not my business to report because I don't have the facility. So what I'm simply trying to agree with Mazi over is the fact that there is current need at least to learn to synergize our own work, our equipment, our own knowledge, the policy that exists, whatever it is, whether they are vigilantes at local government level and state police to be in anticipation or federal police to be. I think when we take charge of the kind of retirees we have and bring them into an order and tell them, yes, you are dropping the uniform, but you are not dropping social responsibility and commitment to your own society.
Okay.
I'm sure that you can get things right, and then we can learn to synergize and get it right.
Okay, now, maybe I just got a couple more minutes to go. I did want your take on the issue of leaving no stone unturned in the search for security, even up to the extent of some governors reported to actually be in direct communication with some of these bandits. Is that a necessary evil?
There are quite a number of things that can happen in government. I'm not justifying any governor that has any direct contact or promotes banditry or whatever.
Of course not.
But I tell you that there are times, even the police will have reasons to have had contact with the most notorious criminal, good enough for them to have space to know what to do. It's just like the case of, what do they say? Is it a cow or a bull or whatever it is in a China shop or something like that? That if you scare it, it's going to drop everything. And if you pull it out, you're going to have problems. So you have to pamper and draw. So what I'm simply trying to say is you must have two things at a go. I'm not justifying the fact that anybody should have contact that is going to harm the state. That is why the supervising agencies, particularly the State Directorate of SSS, should be proactive in reporting, conduct of questionable characters in government.
Okay.
Good enough for government to take decisive action. And what I'm simply trying to say is when they bring you out for VIP protection, it's not that they want you to be a loyal army to somebody else, but it is for you to also have commitment to the establishment that brought you in there, good enough for you at least to synergize and to insist on guiding people to do that which is right. So I think that is essentially what we require at this moment. But let me tell you, we, gentlemen of the press, and ladies too, will have to do what we have to do. Expose, direct, enlighten, guide, set agenda, direct, and insist on our own narratives good enough.
That's a fine place to leave it.
I think that is just what it is.
Thank you, sir. That's a very fine place to leave it. Dr. John Ngamsa, Special Advisor to the Adamawa State Governor on Communications and Strategy. It indeed has been an invigorating conversation. Thank you very much for coming on our program this morning. Okay, so with that, where we're going to have to leave it. Do join us tomorrow, please, for a fresh edition. I am Yori Folari. Bye-bye for now.